The Necromancer's Daughter and the One-Sided Door. "We're only caretakers, never owners," the necromancer said to herself as she surveyed her new purchase. Then she remembered with a smile a Scottish colleague on a dig quoting a saying, "There's nae pockets in a shroud." But then that was how normal human beings saw it. And Rufina was not normal. She knew that there was more than the bare bones in a skeleton's remains. Not only were there the physical DNA echoes of generations past, but something else, intangible, an extrasensory communication with the living. Anyway, back to shrouds and no pockets. She reminded herself that this beautiful old building seemed the physical embodiment of every child's perfect doll's house. Central door, windows either side on 2 floors, detached, timbered, double-pitched roof, barley sugar chimneys, a garden at the front and at the rear. Yet it had a sinister local reputation and remained mostly empty for decades. The heavy wrought iron door keys nestled in her palm. Her father, Ivan Vasiliev, was a Russian aristocrat and émigré, and had added to his family's fortune by founding an auction house preeminent in the trade of ancient artifacts. Like many Russians, he preferred the liberal laws of London to the authoritarian, repressive, Moscow-centered regime. Given his donations to the governing Tories and his serious wealth, he'd gained a fast-track golden handshake to British citizenship. He didn't tell anyone that he was the descendant of Koschei, the Deathless One, greatest of all Russian necromancers, and so he had a supernatural touch in conducting his business. Instead, he joked that his success was owing to him owning Rasputin's rope belt, which he had illegally acquired from a Russian museum after the breakup of the Soviet Republic. Privately, his family possessed documentation illustrating their long family tree of necromancy, powerful both during and after the Tsars. He presented the Mad Monk's rope belt to Rufina on her 21st birthday. She, Rufina, was a pure-blood necromantic, nurtured from babyhood to embrace, well, worship is too strong a word, the old Slavic gods. She had little contact with other children. She had a governess for basic subjects and was trained in necromancy by her father. She'd grown up bilingual, but dreamed in Russian. She spent her early 20s in Neolithic digs, on the back of large donations to university archaeology teams. It was just the beginning of the exhaustive training her father had planned for her. But then he had died, drowned, skating on and falling through the thin ice covering of a lake on the estate, leaving her an orphan. Her mother had long been interred in Moscow soil. The whole affair was probably not so different, she thought later, to the burial of an ancient chief in a hole on the Orkneys. The coffin, purportedly containing Ivan Vasiliev, was lowered into the ground in a tiny Saxon churchyard adjacent to his Gloucestershire estate. It was as if he had been a feudal lord. Villagers came to gawp, non-English speaking Russian relatives, and mysterious strangers attended together with several members of the House of Lords and the usual tittle-tattle journalists. Rufina was the chief mourner and had to endure self-important older men whispering investment suggestions and advising her throughout. Also the young, entitled buck sniffing around this black-haired, wild-looking beauty and her fortune. Meanwhile, unbeknown to the assembly, she had been confirmed as her father's successor in a private ceremony beside the open coffin before his corpse was spirited away for necromantic burial. She had watched impassively as sandbags of roughly Ivan's weight were laid in his place. She sold the house and estate. She installed her cousin as CEO of the auction business. She took the name of Ruby Vasey and began searching for a dwelling she could truly call home. To aid her quest, she used the power of Rasputin's belt to boost her clairvoyance like an otherworldly surveyor's tool. She had first tried it instinctively when searching for sites of ritualized burials. Wearing it turned her body into a biological divining rod. She could walk over the rough, rocky land of a wild outpost of ancient civilization and sense bones under her feet. Her proposals to dig, often counterintuitive and met with skepticism, always produced rich dividends. Also, they nearly always contained what were known in Russia as the dancing dead. Bodies buried with arms wide and legs crossed as though frozen in the act of dancing. In a word, necromancers. Her fellow archaeologists found it unsettling to watch her meditative vigil over newly uncovered bones. But it was a small price to pay for the funding that came with her. She wanted a house that had the right history, that had the ghosts of the dead whispering through its corridors, where she could safely carry out her central role in the global network of necromancers. After weeks of scouring the UK, she had come across this place. For the first time, the belt had grown hot and tight around her waist. The building oozed history and prehistory. Secluded, it sat on a prehistoric mound. Shards of a shattered stone circle had been incorporated into its foundations. Thus it was that Rufina, aka Ruby, entered her newly acquired property. Somewhere within it was the source of the belt's heated reaction. She wandered each floor, getting accustomed to the layout. It was in the master bedroom that the belt became truly alive. Her eyes swept the room. There was a door in the wall opposite the marble fireplace. It had no knob and was locked. Leaving the bedroom, she entered the room sharing the connecting door. The wall was perhaps a foot thick and weight-bearing. Where the door should be had been roughly plastered over. And her belt was reacting to it, just as it had done on the other side. She remembered seeing a box of keys and old door accessories in the cellar. She went down the narrow granite steps, flicked on the bare light, and found it again. Among the clutter was a doorknob similar to those on the other bedroom doors. She collected what she thought were the most likely keys and carried everything into the bedroom. The doorknob on its fixed shaft slipped into place. The third key she tried turned the lock with a few groans. She twisted the knob. The belt was so tight she could scarcely breathe. The hinges on the door were stiff. How long had it been walled off? It swung protestingly open. Ritually posed after death. A male skeleton with its arms wide and legs crossed at the ankles, but knees spread, was strung on ropes that were hooked to the back wall. Rufina gazed at it for some time, then closed and locked the door. Finally, she removed the knob. She smiled. She had company. The house was perfect. So, there we have it. The Necromancer's daughter and the one-sided door. If you like a touch of horror, there are plenty of other stories on this channel. One that I might point you to next is The Undertakers and Dr. Claverley. In the meantime, if you like to read as well as listen to stories, you can go to my channel, which is www.jacksanger.com, and there you'll find novels, plays and short stories. In the meantime, please subscribe and pass on the link to your friends if you would. That's all for now. See you soon. Go in peace. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.